couch. Plus side, I have a really nice couch now. So
That's the plus side.
I know, right? Like I have a really nice couch.
Will not be sponsored by U-Haul.
No, it won't. Like, you all keep your grubby hands off of my things and my life, and I don't like you. It actually really stinks, especially since I know that in a month when I do move, I'm gonna have to use them again because there's nothing else in this area to use. So I'm like, no, I don't wanna.
You're in the countryside. You gotta know someone with just a pickup truck and.
Actually, I know someone with a box truck.
Okay, well there you go.
But I don't know if he's going to be around. Is the problem.
Oh.
He's not around this weekend. Anyway, did you guys actually watch Outlander? Am I the only one who watched that?
I did.
Yay! Okay, so Patrick, do you want to tell Dan or should I what Outlander is about?
It's about this woman who goes back in time in Scotland.
Okay. Is it sort of like medieval life on Mars?
Yeah,
I'd say that's actually a very good description of it.
I've ever heard, actually.
That's actually, yes, exactly what it is.
But
It's life in Mars in 1760 Scotland.
1743, actually.
1743.
Because she goes back almost exactly 200 years.
Yes,
So,
she's from 1945, just shortly after the end of World War II.
like 6 months later, she and her husband are on their second honeymoon, like basically getting to know each other again because they haven't seen each other during the entire war. She was a combat nurse on the front lines, and he was working with MI6.
Okay.
I think she says that they saw each other for 10 total days in 5 years. And they'd been married for 3 years before that, but, you know, they need a little bit to figure out how to be married again. And so they go up to Scotland because one of his ancestors, he's recently gotten very interested in genealogy as sort of a hobby to keep him busy as he deals with the war being over. And she's gotten very interested in botany. But, so they're up in Scotland because one of his ancestors was this, you know, English captain or English commander who suppressed the Scottish, and so he's looking around and finding records about his family and like, la la la, nice married couple thing to do. Let's drive out to an old ruin of a castle and let's look at genealogical records. And of course she's in the corner being like, dear husband, I love you so much. I'm so bored. I'm so bored. And I like that they don't skim over that. Like, they make it very clear that she is super not into this. But, you know, and she and her husband have sex in various different ruins. And in the book, like, so Patrick, did you feel like the show had a lot of sex in it?
No.
Okay, because in the book, they are doing it, like, every 3 pages.
I kind of figured that because it's like, people were telling me from the books that this was sort of Game of Thrones-ish in the amount of sex.
It's Game of Thrones-ish in the amount of sex. It's not Games of Thrones-ish at all in the type of sex.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is totally consensual in this show.
Yes, Dan, here's another part. There's a ton of sex, and it's all between happily married, consenting couples.
All right.
So where's the fun in that?
I know. All of that. Well, like, there's implied stuff that happens off camera, but any sex that's actually on camera, or even any sex that's described in the book, is consensual, happy, married people sex.
Healthy relationships, not good television.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? They actually added a sex scene, which... So this is the weird moment when I think that the TV show is actually more intentionally feminist than the book, which is funny because the book is very intentionally feminist. But like the TV show has a scene where they're in this ruin and she's like super duper bored. So she hops up on a table, spreads her legs, and basically is like, "Hey husband, go down on me." And he's like, "Okay." And, like, that's a scene.
She's not kidding. That's literally exactly what happened.
He's like,
and that's so far been the only sex
happened in... No, because there was the sex in the bed and breakfast, and then there was the sex in the castle.
Okay.
And then the breakfast. But so far,
one of those though them just jumping? Okay.
One of them was them making out and then some squeaky bed springs.
Complete attention watching the show, I'll admit.
Let me put it this way: we've seen her boobs a fair amount.
Yes.
Which channel is the show on? Is it Starz?
Yeah.
It is Starz.
Oh yeah, and it's being produced and written by Ronald D. Moore, as in the guy who did Battlestar Galactica.
I'm a fan.
Which might explain why the show is more feminist than the books.
I mean, I'm not saying the books are not feminist. That's kind of the weird part. So, Patrick, did you get a chance to watch the second episode?
I watched both episodes, yeah.
Okay, because there's a scene in the second episode. Oh, so to go back to, like, what happens. So she and her husband go, like, decide to get up early and go visit some standing stones because it's Halloween, it's Samhain, and there's, you know, some local druids who I guess keep up the old traditions, and so they sneak out to the stones at dawn and they watch these local women do the druidic dance, and it's very beautiful and kind of weird. And she sees some flowers that she wants, but oh no, there's too many people here, she'll come back later. So she comes back later by herself, walks out to the ruins, and all of a sudden one of the ruins starts humming. She's like, well, that seems weird. And it's kind of funny because her character's really, really sensible, but the entire story hinges on her doing the dumbest possible thing in one instant, which is walking up to the stone that's making noise and then touching it.
But you do get the feeling that, like, she's destined to do that, so it's like
You do.
she almost didn't. She didn't just do it, oh, look, I'm going to touch it. It's like, I have to touch this.
Yeah, you do get the impression that she can't not touch it. And in the book, later on, she goes back, and she's, like, going like this, involuntarily, like, leaning forward. So you do get the impression that she can't not touch it. But it is just this funny moment of being like, really? Really? You're this character who's supposed to be super duper logical.
I do have to say, though, I liked the way they did her traveling back in time, because rather than show some cheesy effect, they basically had her describe this time she was in a car accident.
Where she was asleep, and she woke up during a car accident.
Yeah. And, like, that's the sensation she felt. And they basically just show the car accident rather than showing her, like, being zapped back in time, like, magically.
Honestly, it's brilliant, actually. I really love that they do that. And then she's back in the woods, and her car's gone, and the town of Inverness is gone, and this is weird. And then, oh crap, there are redcoats and Scottish people running around. Crap, 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 run from the guns, run from the guns. Hey, you look like my husband. Oh crap, you're trying to rape me. Run, 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 run. Get kidnapped by the Scottish. Get knocked unconscious. Wake up after dark in a cabin somewhere.
Yeah. As you're watching it, you think, oh, he looks like her husband. He'll help her. No, he almost rapes her.
He's not a nice man. And then, like, the more information we get on that character, we're like, oh, he's Satan. Okay. No, because in the second episode, so she ends up in this cabin, and she's there, and they're interrogating her because they think, they're like, so, P.S., why are you out in the middle of the woods in your underwear? Because she's wearing a very pretty white woolen dress, but by Scottish by Scottish 18th century standards, she's naked. And so they're like, are you a whore? Are you a druid? What the crack are you? And that entire conversation gets put on hold because one of the guys in the cabin has been, well, in the book, he's actually been stabbed. No, he's been shot and he has a dislocated shoulder. And then later he gets stabbed. In the movie, in the TV show, they just changed it so he has a really dislocated shoulder. But the guys are trying to put it back in, and they're about to, like, break his arm. And so
he was shot, too.
What?
He was shot, too.
No, he gets shot later in this.
No, he fell off the horse, and they realized he had a bullet wound.
I know, but that's from the skirmish with the English. In the book, in that cabin, he has been shot, and he has a dislocated shoulder from falling off his horse when he got shot. And then, in the skirmish later, he gets stuck with a bayonet. Because Jamie is the most accident-prone person alive. And by accident-prone, I mean prone to people trying to kill him. A lot. Just so much. But yeah.
He volunteered to get beaten.
What?
He volunteered to get beaten.
We'll come back to that. So she pops his shoulder in, and then she rides on his horse with him, and then there's a skirmish later, and then she, like, tries to run away, comes back, yells at him when she finds out that he was wounded, and it's mostly just the two of them snarking at each other for like 10 minutes, and it's wonderful because they're very good snarkers. And then they show up at Castle Leoch, and that's the end of the first episode. The second episode is her trying to figure out how to, like, survive in a 1743 castle and, like, trying to figure out, okay, how do I not make them burn me as a witch? How do I, like, when they ask me where I'm from, I probably should not answer the future. So what's my story on this one? And I love that her story is kind of terrible. She's like, yeah, so my husband died, and a manservant and I were traveling to distant relations in France through Scotland. And then we were robbed, and my manservant was killed, and I ended up in the woods. And then Captain Randall tried to rape me, and that's when my clothes went away. And, like, the guy listening to this is just sort of going, uh-huh. But there is an amazing moment in there, which is the moment when everyone just went, oh, damn. Oh, my gosh, this show is literally the anti-Game of Thrones. Is the guy interrogating... Well, Patrick, do you want to tell this part? Do you know what I'm talking about?
The guy interrogating her is like the Lord, right?
Yeah, the Laird. Colin, he's interrogating her, and he's like, you expect me to believe that Captain Jack Randall, a gentleman and a man of honor, tried to rape you, and she's just like, yeah, because he did. And then the guy goes like, I hardly think, what is it? I hardly think that he would take or it's hardly appropriate that he would take that time to rape you. And she just looks at me and goes, I hardly think there's ever an appropriate reason for rape. And the guy looks like he wants to swallow his own beard. Like, just, oh, yes, I suppose, oh. And it's just this amazing moment where she just flat out just smushes his little...
That's the one part of her story that is true, and it's the one part they don't believe.
I mean, they're like, Captain Jack Randall would never try and rape you, and she's like, but yeah, that part definitely happened.
Yeah.
And then later we find out that that's definitely not out of character for Captain Jack Randall, because she goes to check up on Hunky Jamie, who got shot and has a dislocated shoulder. And he's like, oh yeah, P.S., so the reason why I was running from them was because, you know, Captain Jack Randall kidnapped me this one time from my house when he also raped my sister and then flogged me and then put me in prison. and then flogged me some more. Twice. Yes, I don't like it.
Basically, he's a pretty stand-up guy.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I mean, this is from the book, but we later find out that Captain Jack Randall is basically the worst person ever. 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 Yeah. Like...
It just kind of like always happens when someone looks into their past. Whenever someone is like, oh, I had this relative and he was this great man, like, no, he was actually the worst person ever.
Well, and what I really like is that the show actually pretty much says, you know, her, because when they show her in her time hearing about Jack Randall, they're always like, he's kind of a rakish character. He was very well known for harassing the Scottish villagers and, like, you know, we think he had a patron, we think he was being paid to stir up sentiment against the English and, like, all this stuff. And she just, and her husband is saying, like, he was kind of a rakish, scoundrelly character, isn't it romantic? And then when she's actually in the time period looking at him, she's just disgusted. Like, you are a disgusting human being. Blah. And so yeah. Very, it's I really like its take on history. That history is written by the victors, and so the history that she knows of the Highlands is written by the English. And when she's there and she actually sees things from the Scottish perspective, it is different from what she was told. And then the second episode ends with her very much being suspected of being a spy, and also her pretty epically putting her foot in her mouth at dinner. The guy, like, basically the Laird is continuing to interrogate her, giving her food, trying to get her drunk and asking her lots of questions. And she accidentally identifies the Laird's son as being the son of his brother. And then everyone gets really, really quiet. And then she's just sort of like, I'm gonna go. Yeah.
Now, I haven't read the books, but is he the son of the brother? Because the way everyone's reacting, it almost thinks like, you don't talk about that.
Well, so part of her story involves her finding out that, like, well, her medical knowledge, she remembers that the guy has Toulouse-Lautrec syndrome, which Colum, the Laird of Clan Mackenzie, has misshapen legs, and eventually she realizes, okay, he has this medical syndrome. And she remembers that one of the symptoms is impotence. He can't be his father.
See, that's what I'm thinking.
And so she's like, I straight up know that Hamish, like, but she doesn't care. She doesn't particularly have any strong feelings about this. She just happens to figure it out, and she accidentally reveals that she knows that, and then they're like, okay, so you gotta die. You can't know that. But a lot of people actually think that Hamish is Jaime's son because he is the right age to have been fathered by Jaime last time Jaime was in the castle. And he does look rather a bit like Jaime, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you just Google
Yes.
it, Adam?
No. I was just agreeing.
So,
But
anyway,
he can't be like the Lord's son, is basically like what they're saying.
definitely not Colum's son.
He can't be, yeah.
But we don't know whose son he is until late in the story, and I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
But yes, you are correct in understanding that
Yeah.
Hamish's parentage is kind of a sore subject.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you could just see, like, the way everyone was reacting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just way more than just like, oh, she made a faux pas. Oh, that's funny. She mistook him. He's actually his son, not his.
Oh no!
Like, no. People do not get that silent unless there's something up.
Like, and it was one of those situations where she misidentified him because Dougal, the kid's uncle, was playing with him.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's, like, honestly all it was. And so they literally could have just been like, oh no, Dougal's his uncle. She'd been like, oh, that's nice. But no, everyone goes silent and then starts glaring at her.
Exactly. Because I mean that's just I mean I've been mistaken for my uncle gets mistaken for my father's father. Like they keep like they like people will say like when they meet my dad like, oh, are you Richard's son? Like, no, he's his brother. Which I don't know if that's a compliment to my dad or an insult to my uncle.
Oh, probably.
But yeah, it's like it's not like a faux pas of no one. The room's never gotten silent. You've never heard the clanging of silverware hitting the ground.
Anyway,
Which is exactly what happened in that scene.
Yeah, it's just dead silence.
And everyone's looking at her like.
So, yeah, it's a good show. I really enjoy that show.
It has a lot of potential. I have to say, these first 2 episodes, I wasn't blown away by them, but I was definitely like, yeah, let's see where this is going.
Yeah. Trust me, there's going to be a lot more intrigue and a lot more sex. A lot more sex.
I figured because the books are like that thick. It's like...
Yeah. No, I definitely, when I was reading the first one, I definitely got 600 pages in, and I was like, so it seems like the story's wrapping up. No. We still had another 250 pages of more turmoil and sadness.
Oh, yeah.
And occasional sex. Lots of sex. So, I mean, Patrick, based on the 2 episodes you've seen and just having a vague idea of narrative structure, where do you think they're going with it?
Well, as we said, there's going to be a lot of questions about Hamish's parentage. I know for sure Claire's going to get accused of witchcraft.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's actually was in the preview for next episode. Like someone was screaming, "Witch, witch!"
What? Really? Wow, that's early. It actually doesn't happen until like page 500.
Well, maybe someone else was being accused of witchcraft. I don't know. I just heard word witch being tossed around. There's going to be something going up with Claire and that other chick she was friends with.
Galus?
Yeah. Because she seems like very nice to Claire, which is usually a sign she's evil.
Mrs. Fitz is nice to Claire.
But she has this like ulterior motive, I think.
Mrs. Fitz does or Galus does? Mrs. Fitz or Galus?
Galus.
Okay.
Oh no, Mrs. Fitz seems awesome.
Mrs. Fitz is this nice, sweet old lady.
Yeah.
Who?
He's just kind of like, hey, yeah, whatever.
Oh my gosh! Claire has been riding on a horse for 2 days in her dress. Prior to which she'd like sprinted through the forest and also been wearing it for a while. And then she rides on a horse for 2 days. She tears off strips of it to make bandages. She's covered in mud and Jamie's blood. And she like gets off the horse. And then apparently she just goes to bed in that dress, which, bleh. And then she wakes up the next morning, and they're like, oh, like there's not even a mention of a bath. And I definitely was watching that going, ugh.
Well, like, she kind of described several of the people as being horrible smelling.
Well, okay, that part where Mrs. Fitz says that Murtaugh smells terrible, you have to stop for a second and be like, Mrs. Fitz, who lives in a castle without plumbing, thinks someone smells terrible. Ugh.
They're literally standing near horse shit. How bad does someone smell? If there's just a big pile of horse crap right there, how bad must they smell to overpower that?
I mean, you just have this moment of going, oh no. But yeah, so Mrs. Fitz is like getting Claire respectably dressed, and that involves like Claire having to strip, and she pulls off her dress and she's wearing like normal 1940s underwear, and Mrs. Fitz is just looking at her, and she's like, it's a brassiere. And then she says, which I really liked someone's comment on this, she says, it's from France. And someone was saying, like, I bet It's from France becomes this show's It's from the internet.
It's gonna be like, a wizard did it, like on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Whenever you notice something like that, a wizard did it.
So yeah, and then Mrs. Fitz is just sort of like, ugh, and shoves her into a corset and a giant dress, and I actually like that they gave that much detail just to show how much stinking effort it is to get dressed in the Middle Ages.
Mm.
Here, have 47 layers, half of them of wool. So yeah, fun. Anyway, Patrick, other predictions. So someone accused of witchcraft. Claire will at some point be accused of witchcraft.
Yes.
Hamish's parentage is very plot important. What else?
We're definitely gonna see her husband show up again.
Mm-hmm. Probably try and rape someone.
Yes.
Because that's what he does.
Yep.
I'm actually trying to think
Good
of
old Rapey McRaperson is gonna show up again.
Those silly rapist characters always trying to force themselves upon people.
I mean, I do like that in the story, he's actually slightly more complicated than your average rapey McJoe. In that he's a sadist. Like, he is an actual legitimate sadist. So he can't get off unless he's raping someone. And so...
legitimately pretty fucked up. So.
Oh, yeah, no. They make no bones about how deeply and meaningfully screwed up Jack Randall is. And also, there is a very large chunk of the book that I'm really hoping they do not actually film. Because I would barf.
And I think it's Collins, right?
The Laird?
The Laird, yes.
Column.
His health is going to become a big story point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she flat out says he's on borrowed time.
His health and the leadership of Clan Mackenzie.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be a power struggle at some point.
Yeah.
Between maybe the brother, the son, and Jamie, maybe. I don't know.
Jamie's his nephew.
His nephew, yeah.
And
There will be several people fighting for that position.
Well, and did you notice when Jamie volunteered for the beating that Dougal made it go on a lot longer than it was supposed to? Did you notice that?
I didn't notice it because I just thought it was weird. First of all, I didn't know why he was volunteering for the beating, but I missed why.
You don't actually find out until much later. You're not supposed to know why.
I'm not okay because
You're not supposed to know why.
She was in trouble.
It's unclear whether he volunteered. So this teenage girl, Laguerre, was pulled up in front of the court, and her father was basically like, "My daughter's a slut, and I want permission to have her beaten so she stops being a slut." And Claire's, of course, over there going. But Jamie actually walks up, and he's like, "Yeah, so I will take this beating." And no one, we don't really know why, but they go, "Okay, yeah, we'll beat you up." Bear in mind that he has, in the past 2 days, been shot and had his shoulder dislocated. And so he decides that he wants the fists rather than the strap. And he gets the beating. But there's a point where, so Gala says to the audience / Claire, that the beating's only supposed to continue until blood is drawn, usually when the nose is broken. And just after that, the guy beating him breaks his nose and he spits some blood on the floor, and that should be the end. And if you notice, that's when the guy beating him turns around and looks at Dougal, and Dougal nods. And then the guy looks really unhappy and then hits Jamie again. And then he looks back and Dougal nods. And then he hits Jamie again in the bullet wound. And then he looks back at Dougal and hits him one more time and actually knocks him unconscious. And you're like, what? Because what? They
Yeah.
that does not seem good. And Dougal's his uncle,
Hmm.
so not really great. Oh, and also Jamie is being forced to stay in the stables, and he's not being invited up to the castle for dinner. So Jamie's relationship with Clan Mackenzie gonna be a plot point.
Yeah.
As is Jamie's actual identity, because right now he's under an assumed name.
Oh.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why no one reacts whenever she says Mr. McTavish. She keeps being like, so why is Mr. McTavish not at dinner? And everyone just looks around, and then someone goes, oh, Jamie? Yeah, McTavish, not his name.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was weird that no one remembered him. Like,
He finds out his real name at the least opportune moment. Yeah. There's really no better way to describe it. She finds out his name under duress. But yeah, other predictions.
Someone will die. I don't know.
100 people die. It's a war.
yeah. They- I'm going to, and I'm sure I'm very wrong. Does anyone else ever travel back?
In the book or in the series? Basically, yes.
Okay. Because I kind of think that will happen. She will meet someone else who has...
Only women can do it. She figures this out, actually, and Jamie actually proves it. But only women can do it. And it's almost always 200 years. But not exactly 200 years.
Because there was that guy outside of the window.
Mm-hmm. He was probably a ghost.
Really?
It's unclear. I haven't gotten to the point where they've explained the guy outside the window. I haven't read. The guy outside the window does not get explained in the first book.
All right. Well,
as far as I am into
that is another prediction I will make. That will be explained at some point.
Probably not for a couple seasons.
Probably not, but
because they've optioned the entire series and they've already renewed for season 2.
Yeah, I've heard about that being renewed, which I was surprised because, like, wait a second, they hadn't aired a single episode yet.
They'll be renewed actually after episode 1 when they got 5 million viewers, which is a lot for Starz.
Which is damn good.
Yeah, that's a lot for any premium cable.
We get 5 viewers, I lose my freaking mind.
Viewers?
Yeah, I didn't know we could.
People have watched this? Oh my... I'm having palpitations.
Yeah, no, nobody watches this.
Good. I hope the show lasts because I am intrigued. I want to keep and
Well, I know that it's only going to get more interesting. But no, Patrick, you're missing out on one of my key predictions, or one of my key.
well, then say it. Don't keep asking me.
Okay, Dan, what do you think is going to happen, other than lots of people going to die?
I'll be right back.
Patrick, it's all you.
Okay. Well, gee, Debbie, what do you think's gonna happen?
I already know what's going to happen. That's cheating.
Okay, well then say.
Okay. Well, I already mentioned that there's a lot of sex in this show.
Yes.
And I also already mentioned that it's the only sex actually shown on screen is consensual sex between lovingly married couples.
Okay.
Frank is in the future.
So Claire's got to get married.
Yeah, Claire's going to get married again.
Okay. Yes.
Claire has to get married for expediency, largely. Actually, I don't feel like this is really a spoiler. It's going to happen pretty soon.
They already said it in in the episode where it's the old woman was doing her marriage line.
Yeah.
And they said it forked.
Yeah, she has 2 marriages. Actually, there's really funny, at the end of the book, she has an awesome scene with a priest talking about, like, so, like, morally, how does this work? It's like, well, technically you don't have 2 marriages at the same time. Like, one of your marriages antecedes the other marriage by, like, a lot. Technically, your husband's dead when you married, like, your husband was dead when you married Frank, technically. So, yeah.
He has an actual conversation with someone about this?
He actually tells someone, and they have an entire conversation about it. And the guy is like, I am having so much trouble with this. So much trouble. She tells a priest, under the confessional oath.
Oh, okay.
She also tells one other person.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's really funny. She just straight up tells the priest, and he's like,
Yeah.
This is why you made it, so I couldn't tell anyone, isn't it? And she's like, yes, now give me advice.
That's just got to be like, 18th century, like, pot talk, man. Like, okay, so if I go back in time and I marry someone, is that cheating or, like...
Sorry, Patrick, speaking of drugs, there is a scene which is going to actually probably be the closest to Game of Thrones this show gets.
Oh my god.
Because it involves opium wax and, I don't even know how to explain this. Angry fighting sex while high. Like, I was just...
I'm sold. Bring on season 2.
But you read that chapter like, I really hope no one looks over my shoulder right now.
It's like...
That would be bad.
Like, Debbie, what is opium wax? And why are they doing that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. I mean, like, it's funny because saying that all the sex in the books is between, like, all the sex that's described is between happily married couples sounds like it's all super vanilla. It's not.
I don't believe you.
You don't believe that the sex is not super vanilla?
I'm kind of disturbed because my mom loves these books. And now I'm trying to, and now I have an eerie decision. Why? Because she read 50 Shades of Grey, and that freaked me out too.
Yeah.
Oh God.
There may or may not be a hardcore spanking scene.
Okay, wow. I'm gonna have to make an appointment with my therapist after this.
Like,
Doc, could you fit me in Monday?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Like, having just casually read the book once, I can enumerate for you the differences between her 2 husbands at sex. Like, I know those differences very well. Well, because it's the first person. So when they have sex, you read, like, a lot of sex. Anyway. Yeah, so Claire's going to get married probably in episode... Well, I don't know. I don't know how much they're dragging it out, but she gets married pretty early on in the book. I think it's like page 250, maybe? Maybe 300? But it's pretty early on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're going to judge this sort of like Game of Thrones, they play around with the timelines a lot for the episodes. Because when season 1 ended, that wasn't the end of book 1.
That is true, but we do know that season 1 of this show will be book 1.
Yeah, but they might, like, some stuff might carry over. Like,
I don't know, because here's the thing, like, there aren't really that many multiple storylines in this. Like, we follow Claire. We're going to follow Claire really closely.
okay.
Because the book is written in Claire's first person, so you don't have to deviate that much. Like, Claire and her voiceover are pretty essential to the book making sense. I have my suspicions about where... So the first season is split into 2 halves, 2 8-episode halves. I have my suspicions about where they're going to split it. There are a couple good places. But I think that she's going to get married maybe in episode 4 or 5. Because basically, so what's going to happen from here on out is she keeps trying to get back to Inverness, to go back to the Standing Stones to see if she can get home. But they think she's a spy, and so they don't want to let her leave. So we're probably going to do at least one more episode at Castle Leoch to show her fitting into her life there. But then she actually ends up... They decide to turn her over to the English, because, like, they think she's an English spy, so they're going to turn her over to the English and just sort of leave her there. And so there's a long period where she's actually with the men. She's with, like, a whole group of fighting men going through the countryside collecting the taxes, and then they drop her with the English, and then, of course, it's Captain Jack Randall, and things go down. And Captain Jack Randall continues to be his wonderful, charming self.
Old Rapey Randall.
And the Scottish realize that she's definitely not working for the English at the very least. They don't know who she's working for, but they know she's not working for the English. And so they decide to save her from Rapey McRaperson, but the only way to do that is to make her a Scottish citizen, which means she has to get married. So that's, like, I would guess, episode 3 is probably going to be them at Castle Leoch some more. Episode 4 is apt to be the tax collecting, ending with her confrontation with Randall. And episode 5, I think, will be the wedding. But I could be wrong on that. They've already changed up the timeline a fair bit. She doesn't meet Galus for a while, actually.
Okay.
But, like, Galus is the first person she meets. So... Also, Jamie's going to make out with Laguerre for a while.
Well, if the marriage is such a big game changer for sort of her event, that might almost be the 6th episode.
You think so?
Before the break. Well, yeah, they would want to end on something that's like...
But they're doing 8 episodes and 8 episodes, and the problem is marriage happens pretty early. I think it may end on her getting captured by Randall again after they've been married for a bit.
That would make more sense.
Pretty big game changer. And then, like, the aftermath of that carries on for a while, and then there's the part where they try and burn her as a witch, and then her husband gets captured by Randall, and it gets bad. It gets real bad. It gets real bad. That's the part when you just don't... I really hope they don't actually film that part. Because, yeah.
Then you might be right. Her getting captured, I think, would be a good place for them to leave it on a cliffhanger. So people are like, oh my god, what's going to happen? I have to come back when they come back.
I will say, though, I do think that season 1 is actually going to include a little bit of book 2. Because book 1 does not end on a cliffhanger.
Oh, okay.
So either they have to stop slightly before the end, which I don't think they're going to do. I think they're going to complete that arc. Because Captain Jack Randall's only in the first book. So I think they're going to actually complete his arc and, like, resolve that. But then I think they're going to use a little bit of the second book because, spoilers, I guess, she ends up back in the 20th century. And that would be a really good place to end.
Yeah.
Like, she's back in the 20th century, but this time she doesn't actually want to be.
That would be a good place to end. Like, and ending it like right when she gets back.
Yeah.
Like, she opens her eyes and, oh my God, everything's back. And
Also, she's pregnant at that point. So that would, just...
That could definitely make things interesting.
That is why I think that's how season 1 ends. From there, I'm actually kind of curious on what they're going to do, because the second book takes place, like, 15 to 20 years later. The second book is actually set pretty far in advance, which they'd have trouble doing since they can't really age the actors that much.
Well, I mean, aging the actors, they might make it like just 10 years instead. Like,
maybe. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to handle that. I'm actually genuinely kind of curious about that, because that part I do not know how they're going to do.
I mean, does the time period really matter? Like,
yes, because
it definitely has to be the 1970s.
No, it doesn't have to be the 1970s. It has to be the 1760s.
Oh, 17s. Okay.
Because basically, her husband ends up partaking in the American Revolution.
Oh, okay. Yes. So then, yeah, they
definitely.
They definitely have to.
I really don't know what they're gonna do.
The timeline.
Yeah. So, because the way, the history of Scotland at that point was basically that there's another uprising, and then it gets smushed, and then most of the Scots, including my ancestors, came to the New World.
So historical events are very important to this series. They have to really...
Events are very important to this series, but they don't necessarily happen exactly the same. Which is part of what's interesting about it is that Claire is a time traveler. So she knows the future, but her existence in that time does change things, especially since she's a nurse. She saves people's lives.
Yeah.
And she already, we know at the end of the first book that she's already changed one thing, and the implication is there could be much bigger ramifications of that.
Interesting. But as you said, though, she is a time traveler, so maybe the series will play around with that a little bit more.
I'm kind of wondering. I think it could possibly be, especially since we know it's not exactly 200 years every time. The other person who is in 1743 Scotland with her is not from the 1940s.
Mm. So that they could use that to get around big gaps of time.
Yeah. But then they still have to age up I don't know, it's going to be interesting. Especially since, it's not like people in the 1700s aged well.
Yeah, yeah. But, I mean, most shows kind of ignore aging a lot when it comes to,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to use an example of one of my favorite shows, Once Upon a Time. They did a horrible, they ended a show and it ended a season with oh God, what is it? Henry traveling to Neverland. He jumps through a portal.
Yeah.
And of course they start the next season with him coming out of the portal. And it's pretty obvious this kid is aged. He's about 5 inches taller. His voice is deeper.
Well, I just get cracked up by the people who clearly haven't, or the people who clearly haven't aged. When we flash back to young Regina on Once Upon a Time, and it's oh, it's Lana Parrilla with her hair down.
Yes.
And that's it.
Oh, she has a ponytail. Apparently, that's what makes her younger.
Is that her hair is longer.
What's hilarious, though, is that they kept the same young Snow White, but the young Snow White, they showed a flashback of her, even younger,
yeah.
but she had aged since then, so, it's a weird, why is, but why was the young Snow White who Regina saved like a little kid, and yet the young Snow White whose mom is still alive is like a teenager?
I personally, my favorite is, how do we show Jennifer Morrison as an 18-year-old? Give her glasses.
Yeah.
What? No. It doesn't make her younger. It literally is just Jennifer Morrison in glasses. Like, yeah, that's totally you 12 years ago. I totally believe that.
Yeah, I mean, it is really kind of...
So for me, the all-time record on a show for worst or least convincing young character was when we did flashbacks on Dexter to Dexter as a teenager, which was just Michael C. Hall with worse hair.
With, like, really bad hair.
And you're like, no? That's... No?
You know, they almost should have done what they... Did you ever watch the George Lopez show?
No.
Oh, well, they used to do these flashbacks all the time to him as a kid, but they'd literally like just like CGI George Lopez's head on like a kid's body. It was like his head the way it normally is size. So there's this giant head on this little kid body speaking with George Lopez's voice.
That's awesome.
And you almost wish they would do that anytime they had to do like a kid's thing.
I mean, I think that, personally, I think that they should have just hired the person who does Supernatural's younger casting, because
yeah,
that person's very, very, very good at their job. But
yeah, they've shown like young Sam and young Dean multiple times, and you've never been like, wait a second, that's not.
Well, and like they've had had one very consistent young Sam. They've gone through like 7 young Deans at this point. Just because they keep showing Dean at like really different ages.
Yeah.
So we'll flash back to like Dean as a 7-year-old. Well, crap, the last kid we had playing Dean as a 7-year-old is now 14. So better get a new Dean as a 7-year-old. And like, oh, the guy we used to play Dean as an 18-year-old is now in his mid-20s. I guess we need a new one of those too.
Yeah.
Like, but it actually works pretty well. So yeah, I think that person should just be in charge of past self-casting. They know what they're doing.
But at the same time, if the story is good enough, you almost don't even care.
True, and like some shows it really works on. Like I was thinking about How I Met Your Mother. All the scenes with past them, it's always the same actors, just in a wig, but it really, really works because the stories are being told from their perspective.
Yeah.
And so they're imagining themselves as adults. And that actually really worked for me. Like just whenever we flash back to them in college. Like,
yeah.
Clearly that was 15 years ago and they would be played by other actors. They like would look like totally different people, but it really works since that's the context.
We just give Ted really goofy hair and we give Lily the goth wig and boom, there we go.
And we do absolutely nothing to Marshall.
Yeah, Jason Segel just has not aged.
Well, to be fair, Jason Segel does not age. Like, he just doesn't age.
He's got a picture of Dorian Gray thing going.
Okay, you know who has a portrait of Dorian Gray thing going? Elijah Wood.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Kind of creepy.
There's a Frodo action figure that is getting old in his place.
Actually, no, someone asked him about it, and that's what he said. Someone was like, how come you don't seem to age? And he just went, there's a really ugly portrait of me in my house. And everyone was just going, did you? Oh. I guess you are very good and literary then. Okay.
And it's just like, nah, I just saw League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh, that movie.
Yeah, we can do a whole different show for that.
I feel like that different show would just be us all saying no.
It'd just be us all screaming, "Why, God, why?"
Exactly right. I just
Uh,
also no.
and then just be like, watch Penny Dreadful instead.
True. Okay.
I think we've covered everything we can cover about Outlander.
I really do. Well, wait. Actually, I have one more question before we go.
Okay?
Guys, who do you think Claire's husband is going to be? Do you think
The very fact that you asked me that makes me suspicious of my answer.
Okay.
Because it seems obviously Jamie.
Okay.
So the fact that you're asking that makes me think, well, is it not? Damn it, woman, answer me! We'll just have to find out.
So yeah, you'll just have to find out.
That seems like the obvious answer, though.
Jamie's definitely into her. But to be fair, like half the people there are into her because she's clean and has all of her teeth.
That's definitely a find.
Like, and we have established that, you know, Jamie is good husband material. He's anti-rape.
As far as we know.
No, because he stopped his sister getting raped, and he was like, don't go with him, even if he kills me.
Yeah, he stopped his sister getting raped.
That is true. We don't actually have any
We
more.
don't know what his position on other people's sisters being raped are.
We do know that Dougal is anti-rape. Because he was like, I don't like rape, that one time, when everyone was trying to rape her. We also know that Rupert is kind of pro-rape. Because he has that whole thing where he's like, I want to rape her! And she's like, no.
Tune in next time while we discuss which characters on Outlander are pro or anti-rape.
To be fair, it's better than Game of Thrones, where discussing which characters on Game of Thrones are pro or anti-rape largely comes down to, is it a dude?
Yeah. On Game of Thrones, it's pretty much pro anti-rape of a family member.
No. Well, it's pretty much like, if it's a dude, they're probably pro-rape, unless they're Jon Snow. And that, I'm pretty sure, is it.
Yeah.
That sure makes me sad.
All right.
Oh, wait,
So,
no.
Next week, Doctor Who.
Oh, right. That.
Yes.
Will it be on the day that or will it be the day before, right?
It will be the night
It'll
before.
be Saturday. Yeah. So we'll be doing the episode the next day, the following day.
Yay!
All right. Everyone get excited for Capaldi.
Yay! Doctor Who's back.
Yep.
Moffat. Character assassination.
Save it for next week, Debbie. Save it for next week.
But I have such oomph right now.
Episode 90.